Behind this safety grille here, there's a network of man-made passages, very different in character from potholes, which of course are created naturally. Places like this have a fascination for Britain's 2,000 mining historians, whose hobby is to combine the techniques of the potholer with the science of industrial archaeology to survey, record and preserve disused mines. The Cornish coast north of Land's End is a caver's paradise. One Easter weekend, members of the Shropshire Caving and Mining Club were getting ready to explore the area's disused tin mines. Their preparations were recorded on video by Peter Eggleston, played here by a fellow club member. Winds of 60 miles an hour were lashing the coast that day, but conditions underground would be even more uncomfortable.
A lot of my mates think I'm mad, you know, going underground, but it's a challenge to get to the bottom. You know, you always want to get to the bottom and push yourself further. It's almost like climbing a mountain.
Okay, Nick, give us a wave, please.
So long, guys.
But it's more than the physical challenge that attracts many people underground.
Some mines you enter, footprints are still there in the mud, of hobnail boots and the like. It's just the thrill of seeing what is basically time stood still for over 100 years.
The abandoned mine workings of the Cot Valley should have presented few difficulties for the Shropshire group. Most were members of a cave rescue unit, and many were trained in first aid.
We've done a lot of rescue practices with club members, but nothing really can prepare you for the real thing.
Went into Wheelbellum, but we haven't been in this one.
Andy Yapp and Tom West led the way into the Wheel Herman Tunnel, a steep and narrow cleft in the granite. Close behind them were Pete Etchells, Peter Eggleston and Stuart Tomlins. The plan was for Peter Eggleston to film his friends exploring the mine.
Pete Etchells was in front, Pete Eggleston was in the middle, and I was following at the rear. And he filmed me as we crossed what we call winds, which is a shaft in the floor.
Right, Stuart, that's great. That was a good shot, that was. Good for that shot. All right, yeah.
Although Peter didn't know it, he'd just filmed his last shot of the day. Further along the tunnel was another narrow plank. It was his turn to cross it.
Pete! Pete! He's gone!
Bloody hell.
I'll be quite honest, I thought that for the distance he'd fell, I thought Pete was dead. But I ran out to get help anyway.
Oi! Adrian! It's been an accident.
What's on?
It's Pete. Pete Eggleston has fell down the mine shaft. If you dial 999 and get a rope, I'll go back and see what I can do.
Right, okay, won't be long. Here's some.
Andy and Pete were the first to realise that Peter was still alive, 60 feet below them.
Me and Pete Etchells got our sit harnesses and all our kit, ropes. I got a few tapes and odds and sods, towels, anything to give Pete first aid, you know, some rags to dress his head with. I just grabbed what I could think of at the time.
I managed to climb down as far as where it opened out a bit. And from this position I looked down and I could see his video camera down in the bottom. He'd started to murmur by this time.
That's killing me!
Don't worry, hang in there, Pete. Andy's coming with a rope. We'll be down to you as fast as we can.
Did you see anything?
No. As I went down, it got very narrow, and I went down through this like crevice. My main concern was not to knock any rocks down. I was talking to Pete all the way down, but wasn't getting much response at that time.
Just don't move. Stay where you are. Everybody's working on getting out.
He'd actually fallen down the shaft about 60 foot and fallen into a gully.
It was a struggle for Andy to squeeze through to where Peter was jammed. It was going to be impossible to get him out quickly.
His feet were elevated and his head was against the hanging side of the rock.
We'll get you out, don't worry. Where's the pain?
Back.
When I noticed there was blood in his ears, I thought, oh God, he's fractured his skull. And I was very careful dressing his head.
Despite his worries about Peter's condition, Andy knew how important it was to be reassuring.
Put this towel over your head. Stop other muck getting into your wound.
My thoughts then were to really get someone down there who knew what they was doing. Expert advice, really.
All right? Well, I'll get to you in no time at all.
That expert advice was on the way. In all, around 30 people would eventually be involved in the rescue. First, the Cornwall Fire Brigade went in to assess the problems. They set up a register to make sure they always had a record of everyone who went below ground. Paramedic Phil Thompson added his name to the list and went in to be briefed by Station Officer Dave Edwards.
Right, we've got an 18-stone man jammed upside down in a 60-foot shaft. It's quite narrow in places. We've got a problem with this edge of it. There's a lip, an overhang. That's possibly going to collapse, so we're going to put a piece of hydraulic jacking equipment to secure it, to lower you over.
Get that medic down here now! Okay, I'll pass it on.
I could hear that there was, some panic and unhappiness down below, so I didn't really think about it too much. I offered to go down and give medical assistance at the bottom.
Have you ever been down a mine shaft before?
No, actually I'm terrified of heights.
You don't have to worry about heights, this is just deep.
They rigged me up with a seat harness, pulled the seat harness on, and then they gave me some instructions on how to abseil.
And you can actually control the speed you go at. And
Not only had Phil never been down a shaft before, he'd never abseiled either. He was worried about how he was going to cope with the climb and concentrate on doing his job.
the tighter you hold that, the slower you're going to go, right?
To actually step over the edge, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I sat down on the edge of the shaft.
Now, we've got you on the lifeline. Trust us, you're going to be completely safe. See the ledge down there? I want you to put your right foot in it.
I couldn't see anything that looked remotely like a foothold, so I just sort of held the rope very, very tightly and shut my eyes and said a short prayer and kicked off the edge and swung and slithered. It must have been about the most ungainly bit of abseiling ever known. I was just about getting into the swing of it and thinking this isn't too bad when a lock of my hair shot up inside the friction brake and it caught, locked solid. I couldn't work out what I was going to do about it at all. In order to reach my scissors, I would have to have used my right hand, but my right hand was holding the rope. If I let go of the rope, I was going to go down. So in the end, it was just a question of tearing my head to one side. I thought to myself, well, haircut tomorrow, Philip. There was one place in the descent where the shaft narrowed off, and it was a struggle to slide through. It must have broken his fall, stopped him on the way down.
Phil had no idea how significant this narrowing would become on his way back up.
I speeded up my descent, and then I could see Andy looking up at me. All I could see was this light looking up at me because his face was in the shadows. And so I aimed in to where he was. I think actually he was pulling my rope a little bit to guide me down.
He's still conscious. I asked him the year and he said 1987.
Okay.
He's got a still movement. He's complaining about his back. He's damaged his back. But he can move his legs.
Andy had already been dealing with him and done an admirable job. As far as first aid was concerned, it had all been done. The next bit was going to be the difficult bit of how to actually get him out of there without making any other injuries worse.
It was a strenuous half-mile climb to the cave entrance where Ambulance Staff Officer Les Slade was sorting out what rescue equipment was needed, as well as keeping the local media up to date with developments.
They are saying at the moment the patient is stable. They're getting a bit concerned, I think, to get him removed from the incident, because obviously the longer it goes on, the patient is going to go into shock, and obviously hypothermia is a problem.
It was freezing cold and there was water dripping through the rocks. You could hardly see what you were doing. My heart was beating like a drum.
Okay, deep breath for me.
What I had to do was to concentrate on just thinking about my ambulance aid in stages.
And what I want to do is to check your pulses. Okay?
He had no radial pulses. Now, what that means to me is that his blood pressure is down. I found a good pulse at his carotid pulse, which was fast. A low blood pressure and a fast pulse equals clinical shock, and somebody who's going into clinical shock needs to come out of there fast.
Something's sticking in my back.
Okay, now, I'm going to feel under your back, okay? You tell me when I'm the source of the pain.
It was obvious that he must have fractured something within his backbone because there was nothing external sticking into him. The big quandary now is that do you do a snatch rescue and pull him out and you risk bringing him up paralysed, or you go slowly, slowly, slowly and risk the fact that his medical condition is going to get worse because he's got bleeding. In the end, I had to go for what I found, but I had found hard evidence of a spinal injury, so I had no choice. This was going to be a slow removal.
Okay, Sue, got the collars? Rope free!
Up top! You can take the rope in! They want the stretcher sent down next!
I'll pop a collar on you now, Pete.
Okay.
It's precautionary, okay? Keep your head still. All right.
Not being disrespectful to Peter, he's a big chap.
It's no good, this one will never fit.
Our collars, we have 6 different sizes. We haven't got one to fit Peter.
No. This one won't fit either. We're going to have to use the orthopedic stretcher, Andy.
Because of his weight on the rough rock-strewn floor, we can't slide the orthopedic under him. It's supposed to split into 2 halves and just slide under. It won't go under.
Slide all the way down the side.
Your leg.
Keep yourself in a straight line, Peter. This is never going to work, Andy. We're going to have to think of someone else.
Every 10 or 15 minutes or so, we were asking if they were okay, if we hadn't heard anything from them. Much probably to their annoyance because they were trying to get on with some work. But we had to know what was going on as well, for our peace of mind.
In the cramped conditions, it took Phil and Andy over an hour simply to turn Peter round onto the orthopaedic stretcher, even though they knew it would never be strong enough for the lift. Then they needed Stuart to help manoeuvre Peter onto a ledge, where they had enough room to transfer him onto a second, larger and sturdier paraguard stretcher.
Okay, I'll have to slide out this one, this side on here.
This wrapped around Peter to keep him secure for the hazardous journey up the shaft. It was difficult, precise work that took another hour.
Like some fresh air. All right.
Nothing was straightforward. Peter's size continued to cause problems. The straps were too short to secure him safely in the stretcher. The problem was solved using webbing tapes Andy had managed to grab earlier from the car.
A lot of people were stood in dangerous positions for a long time, freezing cold, just waiting until we had the go-ahead from Phil to start pulling them aloft.
Looking at my eyes.
It was now 4.5 hours since Peter's fall. Phil did his final checks, but was relying on Andy and Stuart for the lift.
Over to you guys now.
My life in your hands.
Don't worry about it. Andy and I'll get him out, and you.
We decided that Andrew would go up first and act as what we call a barrow boy for the stretcher and pull it off any obstacles it may come against as it went up the pitch.
It's going fine. Keep going.
Next, the most difficult part. Phil had to be strapped to the stretcher so that he could monitor Peter's condition on the way up, but it meant he was a second passenger on the main hauling line.
We're talking quite a weight now, probably in the region 28, 30 stone. Because of the nature of the cave or entrance, we couldn't get a direct pull on the line. So we were basically going around corners as well. It was just sheer hard work.
It's a strange feeling because you're held on a rope which is held by a fire crew. If they're not holding on to you, you could make a very quick descent. It came upon me very strongly that this is a situation that my patients must feel like. It's a very, very vulnerable feeling.
You all right there, Phil?
Yeah. Peter, can you tell me what year it is?
1989.
The poor guy, he didn't know if it was Christmas or Boxing Day. But again, getting an answer shows a higher level of orientation than a grunt or a groan. And this is how I was assessing him the whole time, asking him the same questions. I think he got fed up with me, I really do. I was starting to feel that, you know, it's been a long, drawn-out job, but we're now well on our way, until we got to the narrow in the shaft. We were jammed solid. I was pushing for all I was worth. I could see Andy just above me manipulating the ropes.
We're stuck! Stop! Give us a hand!
I was about 10 foot further on up the shaft. So I descended back down on the rope and turned the stretcher round so they could squeeze through this crevice.
And how they pulled us through, I really do not know. We just suddenly shot up into free space once more. On that last final lift up the shaft, I was starting to question the decisions that I'd made an hour ago. At that point, he was as close to lights out as I'd seen him. And really, on the end of a rope, there's nothing I can do about it. It's entirely in the hands of the guys on the other end of the rope.
At this stage, the port of power equipment, the hydraulic jacking equipment, was getting to be in the way. It had served its purpose, so that we had to release it. Otherwise, it was going to hook up on the stretcher and cause all sorts of problems. We did that and let the hauling line down on a piece of the timber that was at the edge of the shaft.
Stop being breaking!
We dropped, probably about 4 inches. Felt like about 6 foot.
Phil, don't worry, we've got you.
It's total panic. You think you're going right the way back down to the bottom. In the end, what actually happened was that 2 of the firefighters grabbed hold of my jacket and scruffed me over the edge.
Well done, Phil. Good job.
Probably a little ashamed to admit it, but I wanted out. I'd had enough.
Stand back, medic coming through.
I went past a dozen or so firemen on the rope. I wanted to meet up with my crewmate, get out into the fresh air and the sunlight.
Phil was out, but there were to be other obstacles before Peter could reach the surface.
Me and Adrian Pearce and fireman pulled the bottom of the stretcher up to an horizontal position. This proved very difficult due to the weight of Pete.
Cross another shaft to get out. We're just coming over ladders.
1, 2, 3, yeah!
They couldn't see the bottom of the shaft that they were now inching Peter across. One false move could be fatal for any one of them.
We was always fighting for space, and that there was only enough room basically for 3 of us. We literally had to lift Pete, which was very hard work, over the first shaft. This proved a time-consuming job. Once we got him over the first shaft, the fire brigade took over and basically took him out of the mine.
Peter had fractured 4 vertebrae, but the slowly approach had saved his life.
Apparently I was conscious shortly after I had the accident, but it's as if the memory tape had been rewound to before I went in that mine and then erased, because for some reason I don't even remember going into that mine. I'm worried that it would come back as a nightmare, but it hasn't, and I hope it never will. People that put themselves to some risk in helping me, and it's obviously something you do when you're a member of a rescue team. You don't think of your own dangers and your own life as much as helping the victim. And that's obviously what they did. And I'm so grateful to them, to Phil and his colleagues, the fire service, and obviously my friends of the Shropshire Caving and Mining Club.
Pete, it's me, Stuart!
Looking back on it, it boils down to teamwork, you know. The fire brigade did a great job. Phil did a brilliant job. I believe it's the first time he'd been down a mine, let alone abseil down a shaft. You've got to take your hat off to Phil.
Phil still had to help get Peter to hospital before he had time to reflect on the 6-hour ordeal.
Everybody relied on the other guys to be doing their part, and that's what made it work, and that'll stay with me. But potholing, not for me. No, thank you.